This week we're looking at the Israelites at Mount Sinai, which is in Exodus chapter 19. But before we get to Exodus 19, we've got to backtrack a little bit and get some context. And for this, I'm going to go all the way back to Genesis chapter 12. It's actually Genesis chapter 12 that sets the stage for much of what's going on in the book of Exodus. Back in chapter 12 of Genesis, we read, "The Lord had said to Abram, 'Go from your country and your people and your father's household to the land that I will show you. And I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and you are to be a blessing. And I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you, and all peoples on earth will be blessed because of you.'" Genesis 12 sets up this amazing moment of drama where God shows up to this man and says, "If you want to go to where I show you to go, I am going to pour out these awesome blessings on you." And for us, it seems like what would be a super cool story is to see how Abram wrestles through the issue. How does he talk to his family? Does he think this is just crazy talk? Is he going to do it or not? And we could have this amazing story of Abram making this decision. But that story is not even remotely interesting to the author of Scripture, because the very next verse says, "So Abram went." So there's no drama around whether or not Abe is going to go. The drama is around how God is going to fulfill the promises. These promises of making him into a nation. These promises are the backdrop for the narrative events of the book of Exodus. Because at the beginning of Exodus, as you know, the people are in slavery. And we've been now through the story of the people being released from slavery. But it's not actually until Exodus chapter 19 that this ragtag bunch of slaves officially becomes a nation. It is Exodus 19 where the promise made to Abram way back in Genesis chapter 12 finally becomes fulfilled. And in Exodus 19 verses 3 through 8, we're told this really, really amazing thing. Moses goes up to God, and the Lord calls to him from the mountain. And he says to him, "This is what you are to say to the house of Jacob and what you're to tell the people of Israel. You yourselves have seen what I did to Egypt and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now, if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all nations you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words you are to speak to the Israelites." And so Moses goes down, he summons the elders of the people, he sets before them all of these words that the Lord commanded him to say. And in verse 8, we get the critical answer to the question of whether or not they want to do this. All the people responded together, "We will do everything the Lord has said." Now, this is really, really important because this is where we officially get the covenant with the nation. Covenant's a word that we don't use a whole lot, but basically it just means treaty, the formalization of a relationship. Now, the thing that we have to remember is that the Israelites are already delivered from slavery. They've already been saved from slavery. The law comes after the salvation, and that even has implications for us today. And what God is doing is he's showing up and he's saying, "Hey, this is done. You're free from slavery. You can go your own way. You can do what you want. You're good to go. But here's the deal. If you want to enter into a relationship, a treaty, a covenant, and you want to be my people and I will be your God, then here's the deal." And this is where we get the law, because the idea is that if the people are going to represent God, then they have to represent him well. They have to represent him appropriately. They can't just do whatever they want and think that they're going to be representing God well. So God's showing up and he's saying, You're saved. If you want to go your own way, go your own way. But if you want to enter into this treaty, I will make you into my special treasure. Now, the term that's used here is actually a technical term for the treasure a king would set aside so he could show off how super cool he was to foreign dignitaries. So if I live in the ancient world, in the ancient Near East, at the time of these people, and I'm a king, say, in Assyria, I've got my palace laid out so that when a foreign dignitary comes, they have to walk down particular hallways that are filled with pictures of me being awesome, and they're also filled with special items of treasure so that by the time the dignitary makes it into my presence, they are so completely overwhelmed with the awe-inspiring sheen of my glory that they just think I'm the coolest thing since sliced bread. And that's what God is saying the nation of Israel will be for him. They will be his special treasure that he shows off to the world so that the world will be drawn to the Lord. In other words, this whole thing is God's missions plan. God is going to pull a nation aside for himself, a people that will be his own. He's going to pour out his blessing on them, and their responsibility is to, in turn, be a blessing to the nations. This is how God is going to reach the nations of that time. So what about for us? What about Christians today? We don't have a special land that God is giving us. We don't necessarily have a national identity. Sure, we have identity as Christians, but we're not a political unit. So have things completely changed? Does God reach people through a totally different way? Well, I don't think so. I think the idea has always been, and still is today, that God is going to draw people to himself. He's going to pour out his blessing on those people, and that is going to show to the world how amazing God is, and that will be the thing that draws people to the Lord. But maybe the nature of some of the blessings have changed a little bit. As a matter of fact, Jesus, very early in his ministry, he went up on the side of a mountain, he sat down, and he began to teach his disciples, enumerating for them the blessings that the Lord would pour out on his people so that the world could see his glory. This is in Matthew chapter 5, and we call it the Sermon on the Mount. When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. And he said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. And blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. And blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Yes, blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you." Now, I don't know about you, but persecution and mourning, these don't really feel like blessings to me. You know, I'll take the hunger and thirst for righteousness, thank you very much, but I'll let the persecution go to someone else. But think about this. How many of you, even in the small group, can tell a story of coming to Christ through the story of someone who had suffered? Or how many times have we been sitting in church and we listen to a story of someone who has endured great moments of mourning, and they talk about how the Lord was with them through that, and our faith is inspired? Or how many of us know the story of being inspired in our own faith as we hear the persecution that someone else has endured for the sake of the name of Christ? I would contend that God's missions plan has always been to pull a people aside for himself, to pour out his blessing, and our responsibility as the receivers of that blessing is to in turn bless others. These things in our lives, the meekness, the hungering and thirsting for righteousness, the persecution, the mourning, these are the things that God is going to use to display his glory and draw others to himself. Our job is just to be faithful to the Lord through the process.